Hey guys, welcome back. Today I want to talk about sharing and cloning projects using Git. Now, if you're working in the workplace, this is definitely a skill that all developers need to know. When it comes to developing or working on large applications, we need to use this thing called a repository. And a repository is basically a location where data is stored and managed. More than likely, when you're working with repositories, you're working with large scale projects uh, that a group of people are going to be working on. And I just wanted to just show you in this video how you should go about sharing and cloning projects using Git. All right, so the first slide, creating a repository. So let's just say you have a project that you want to initially commit to an empty repository on GitHub. Now, I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard of GitHub, but it's basically a website where you can go to create repositories and share, and you can also clone applications from repositories using GitHub. But for this particular slide, we're just going to be talking about sharing an application to GitHub, to a repository on GitHub. All right, so let's start off right here. So let's just say you're on your computer and you're working on an application, and it's taking you a long time to complete this application, and you decide that you may need some help. You may need more people who are interested in the application that you're working on, um, to help you with the development of this application. So the first thing that you need to do is find a way to connect your application to this remote repository. So what you have to do is actually share this application. Now, there are many things, there are different tools out there that you can use to share your application to GitHub, but there is this tool called Git Bash, and this Git Bash tool is basically used to help you create local repositories and push your project that you're working on to this remote repository on GitHub so that other people can help you work on this particular application. So let's just say you're on your computer, okay, and you want to share this application. The first thing that you need to do is create yourself a local repository. This local repository is basically used to bridge the connection between your machine and the remote repository. Now, in order to do that, you would have to type in these commands that you see down here. I'm going to show you guys how to actually do this. I'm going to walk you through it later on in the video, but I just wanted you guys to get a full understanding of exactly how you would go about doing this. So the first thing you want to do would be to go into the application that I was talking about earlier called Git Bash and navigate to the location of your project. Once you go to the location, or you make your way to the location of your project, you would want to type in this command, git init, which is used to initialize the repository. This command is used to simply create a local repository on your machine. And then after you do that, you would then want to add all the files associated um, with your application to this local repository. So, as I said before, the first step is to create the local repository, which is git init. The next step is git add, which is used to add all the files associated with your project to this local repository. And then also you want to perform this command right here, git commit -m and then first commit. So basically what this is doing is just simply adding a message and committing all the information to your local repository. So basically it takes all the information, it takes all the files that you have and it commits that, and then it also adds associates that with a message and puts that in your local repository. Now, the next thing is that you want to link your local repository to this remote repository. Now, if you're using GitHub, every repository is associated with a particular URL. And a way to connect to that URL would, in order to connect to that remote repository, we would use a URL right here. As you can see, the github.com coding interview 100 test repository. And basically this is the entire command, git remote add origin, and then the URL associated with this remote repository. All right, so after that, we then want to go git push dash u origin master. Now this is simply used to push the application that you have in this local repository to this remote repository. And that's pretty much how you would go about sharing a project using Git. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is cloning a repository. So cloning basically means that a project already exists on GitHub or in a repository on GitHub and you want to clone it locally. So just imagine you're in the workplace and your manager comes over and says, hey, I have this repository that's on GitHub. I need you to clone it and start working on it. So when he says that, you should know exactly what to do. The command for cloning an existing repository is pretty simple. As you can see down here, you just go git clone and then the URL associated with this remote repository here on GitHub. Now, it's pretty straightforward. That's how it works. Let's just say you're at your computer. You don't have a copy of the project. In order to grab that copy of the project, you would have to go into GitHub, look for the URL associated with this repository, and from there, once you type this command, it's going to automatically create yourself it's going to create you a local repository, and then from there you'll be able to work on the application on your computer. So just wanted to give you a brief rundown of how you'll go about sharing and cloning repositories using Git, and I actually want to show you how to do that in real time, so let's get to it. All right, guys, so for the first part of this video, I'm going to be showing you how to share a project that you've already created on your machine and send it to a remote repository on GitHub. So the first thing that we want to do before we even get to that is to download this tool called Git Bash. Now, in order to do that, you just want to go to Google, type in Git Bash, do a search, and then you want to click on the fourth link down here, Git for Windows. And then it's going to take you to this download page. And if you scroll down, you'll realize that this download is going to consist of a suite of tools. We have Git Bash, which is something that we're going to be using to communicate with the remote repository. It also consists of these other applications down here, Git GUI, as well as shell integration. But for this video, we're just going to be using Git Bash. All right, so I've already downloaded the application on my computer. So let's just say this is the project I already have here. It's pretty much a very simple project, but obviously if you're working with repositories or GitHub, you're going to be working with fairly large projects. But I just wanted to provide an example so I can clearly explain how you'll go about sharing an application or a project that you've created on GitHub. All right, so after you download Git Bash, well, before we even get to that, I just want to show you what the project is. Basically just form here, a form page. It's index HTML with a CSS style sheet, and this is pretty much what it looks like. All right, so basically what I want to do now is to go into the folder where my project exists, and then I want to right click. If you right click, you'll see this option called Git Bash here, which is basically going to open up the Git Bash application, and is going to is going to point this application to this directory right here. So if we go to pwd, you'll see the full directory right here. All right, so this is exactly where it's located, this project. All right, so the first thing that we want to do is, first of all, create ourselves a local repository. Now, I showed you guys the steps to do this in the PowerPoint presentation, but I'm going to show you how to do that now. So to create a local repository, the first thing we need to do is type this command, git init. This is going to create a local repository on our computer. And as I said before, the local repository is going to be used to interact with that remote repository. So we want to create our local repository. After we do that, we want to add all the files that is in this directory to this local repository. So we would go git add and then dot. All right, so all the files have been added to our local repository. After that, I just want to do a commit, git commit -m, and then I'm just going to type in first commit. All right, now so basically what's happening here is that I'm just committing all the files to the local repository, and I'm just associating a message with that commit of the files to my local repository. All right. Now, the next thing we want to do is to actually link our local repository with our remote repository. So we would go git remote add origin, and then we want to grab the URL associated with the remote repository that we're going to be using. So in order to do that, what I'm going to actually do is go to my browser. All right. And as you can see here, I have a GitHub account right here. GitHub account, coding interview 100. And this is a repository, this test repository. So as you can see, the repository is currently empty. And if you haven't used GitHub before, in order to create a repository, you just go up to this plus icon up here, new repository, and then simply name the repository. So right here we have a test repository, and it's currently empty. It doesn't consist of any projects at all. All right, so we want to copy this URL. This is the URL that I was talking about that is associated with this particular repository. So I've just copied it here, as you can see. And what I want to do is actually go back to git bash. And what I want to do is actually paste that URL right here. Now, after I press enter here, it's going to link my local repository to that remote repository. So I press enter. And then after that, I just want to go git push -u origin master. Now what this is going to do is push our application from our local repository to the remote repository. So we just press enter. Then it's going to ask us for our username, which is okay. Then it's going to ask for a password. The username and password is associated with our GitHub account, obviously. Okay, so after we do that, our application should now be in that GitHub repository. So we're going to check that now. This is our repository. Just want to refresh the page. And this is what we have, index and style.css. Now, that's how you would go about sharing an application that is on your machine in GitHub, pretty much, using Git. All right, guys, so for the second part of this video, what we're going to be doing is cloning a project using Git. So the first thing that we want to do is to remove our existing project that we were just working with. And right now, we're just going to assume that we don't have a copy of the application. But we have a repository where we can grab a copy of this application. As you can see here, we have index.html and style.css. All right. So if you imagine that you're in the workplace, you know, your boss comes over and says, hey, I need you to pull this application down from GitHub. I'm going to show you how to go about doing that right now. So the first thing that we need to do is to actually open up Git Bash, and we also want to figure out where we want this project to be. Right now, in this video, we're going to be cloning the project down on the desktop for right now. So I'm just going to right click, Git Bash here, and you can just check the present working directory to just confirm. Present working directory is the desktop currently. Now what we're going to be doing is simply just taking the application from here, the index.html and style.css, and making it available on our computer. Alright, so we just want to clone this. This is the first thing that we need to do. We want to clone this URL associated with this remote repository. Then we want to go back to Git Bash and then simply type git clone and then just simply paste the URL. All right, then from here, we just simply press enter. And as you can see, the folder is actually created up here, this test repository. All right, so this is the actual folder that consists of the project on GitHub. It consists of an index.html as well as the style.css. And then once this is downloaded on your computer, you can simply just start working with it. And this pretty much sums up how you would go about cloning a project using Git. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video if you've learned something from here. Also, don't forget to subscribe. And see you in the next one.